Ontario, where Prime Minister Carney has unveiled a set of measures to protect the Canadian steel industry. The move coming as the steel sector in Canada struggles under the weight of 50% U.S. tariffs. Carney says Canada has one of the most open steel markets in the world, and changing conditions mean Canada needs a new approach.
Over time, we become too dependent on the United States as our biggest customer, with more than 90% of our steel exports going south of the border. So moving forward, we must diversify our trade relationships. And above all, we must rely more on Canadian steel for Canadian projects. And those shifts start today.
Among the new measures, a commitment to prioritize Canadian steel to build major projects. Ottawa will invest $70 million in training and income supports for steel workers, and steel originating in China will be slapped with a new 25% tariff by the end of the month. CTV's Scott Hurst joins me now to talk more about this. Scott, good afternoon. What more did we hear from the Prime Minister?
Renee, good afternoon. Really an important announcement coming out of Hamilton, which we all know is known as Steel Town. It really is the beating heart of the Canadian steel industry. And a lot of these are measures that those in the steel industry had been hoping for to protect the steel industry right now amid the ongoing trade war with the United States, and ultimately make it more competitive in the future and make it more of a priority when it comes to Canadian steel for Canadian projects. So here are some of the things specifically that Carney announced today in Hamilton. By restricting and reducing foreign steel imports entering the Canadian market, setting quotas on the amount of foreign steel making it into our market. And Prime Minister Carney, as you mentioned, saying steel originating in China will be subjected to higher tariffs to try and prevent steel dumping amid the ongoing global trade war, particularly as Canada tries to negotiate a trade deal with the United States. And Carney went on to make announcements about protecting steel workers right now as the industry is facing 50% tariffs that have been imposed by the Trump administration. And Carney also talked about prioritizing the use of Canadian steel to help build big infrastructure projects in this country and changing federal government procurement process to encourage the use of Canadian steel. And so right now the industry is under significant threat. Steel, aluminum, and also recently the U.S. president has gone after copper, but particularly when we talk about steel, it is under significant threat, facing that 50% tariff from the Trump administration. And those in the steel industry say these tariffs have been crippling. It's resulted in job losses and really been a detriment to the industry as a whole, which is incredibly important to the Canadian economy, as so much steel, particularly right now, is dependent on the U.S. market. So basically the bottom line from the Prime Minister today is, firstly, to protect the Canadian economy, the Canadian steel industry from foreign markets, and also make the Canadian steel industry more competitive in the future, but also right now, as this ongoing trade war continues and negotiations continue with the United States, there are measures to protect the industry and protect the steel workers.
All right. CTV's Scott Hurst reporting for us from our national newsroom. Thanks for this, Scott.
Thanks, Renee.